Avalokieshvara Bodhisattva is greatly compassionate and rescues those who suffer. So why doesn't she answer my prayers? N looked up at the vast blue sky, her eyes distant, and spoke in helpless despair. That foolish and ignorant thought had been repeating in her mind for days. She had no job and had been unemployed for nearly a year. Idling around all day, eating and playing without purpose, made her feel exhausted and hopeless. She wanted to find a stable job to support herself and stop being criticized for still depending on her parents at her age. Her full name, given by her parents, was Ntn, born in 1992 in Kh province. After surviving several accidents by reciting the Buddha's name and narrowly escaping death each time, her faith in Buddhism and the Three Jewels became even stronger. N had previously spent 4 years working as a teacher, a truly respectable profession that benefited society. However, life was difficult, and a teacher's salary was not enough to cover living expenses. On top of that, despite dedicating more than 4 years to the profession, she still had not been accepted into the official state payroll, which left her deeply dissatisfied. With such unstable work, she decided to quit teaching and officially became unemployed in 2017, staying at home and relying on her parents for more than a year. Every day, she heard her parents urging her to find a new job, while neighbors whispered and gossiped about why N stayed home all day without working. Those comments gave her no peace. She became gloomy day and night, and sometimes, overwhelmed by frustration, she would argue angrily with her parents. It wasn't that N didn't want to work, she had simply searched everywhere without anyone hiring her. Having too much free time, she gradually fell into a life of endless entertainment and forgot all about spiritual cultivation. Back then, N still ate meat and only became vegetarian on full moon days. Worse still, on ordinary days she indulged herself with all kinds of seafood to satisfy her cravings, without the slightest feeling of remorse. As she continued down this path, she lost control of herself and repeatedly violated moral precepts. Although she did not directly harm others, these unwholesome actions slowly consumed her blessings, causing her already unstable life to become even more miserable. Despite all the partying and idleness, N remained anxious about being unemployed. She persistently sent out job applications everywhere, applying for every type of position imaginable. No job seemed beneath her, yet strangely, no place accepted her. Even positions washing dishes or cleaning construction sites never came her way. It was truly baffling, and N could not understand why. Feeling utterly helpless and discouraged, N dressed neatly and stood solemnly before the Buddha altar with her palms joined respectfully, praying to Avalokieshvara Bodhisattva to bless her with employment. Every 1 or 2 days, she prayed like this again and again. Yet 1 month passed, then 2 months, and nothing changed. There was not the slightest improvement. Gradually, resentment and disappointment arose in her heart. She wondered why the Bodhisattva compassionately rescued so many suffering people yet seemed to ignore her. One day, just like any other, N had nothing to do and felt terribly bored. She wandered online reading random things to pass the time. By chance, she came across a Dharma talk by a monk titled roughly, "Why do some people receive responses when praying to Avalokieshvara Bodhisattva, while others do not?" In the lecture, the monk explained that people must accumulate blessings through acts such as honoring their parents, freeing animals, practicing vegetarianism, cultivating spiritually, and doing good deeds. Only then could they hope to receive spiritual responses. Every word pierced deeply into N's heart. She gradually awakened and finally understood why she could never find a job and why her prayers had gone unanswered. The truth was that N had never cherished her blessings. On one hand, she was lazy about doing good deeds and accumulated no new merit. On the other hand, she wasted the blessings she already had on meaningless pleasures and entertainment. Blessings are precious assets that follow us from one lifetime to another. Therefore, one must not only preserve blessings but continually cultivate and increase them, so that both present and future life may improve. That Dharma talk felt like a hard slap awakening N from her ignorance. She immediately repented for her resentment toward the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In reality, Their compassion is as vast as the ocean, always ready to save all beings without discrimination. The important thing is whether sentient beings sincerely wish to escape suffering and are willing to reach out for help. N realized that during the past year, she had allowed herself to be swept away by temptations and harmful habits. She did no good deeds, her mind burned with greed, anger, and ignorance. She repeatedly broke precepts without restraint, and she had even abandoned daily cultivation. Living like that, where was the sincerity needed to escape suffering and receive the boundless compassion of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas? They had saved her from death many times before, yet before repaying that kindness, she had already turned her back on them. Everything suddenly became clear in N's heart. Looking back at the wasted and degraded year she had lived through, she nearly burst into tears. At that moment, she could not accept herself. In self-reproach, she slapped herself painfully across the face. Overwhelmed by regret and remorse, she stood up from the computer, went to the Buddha altar, lit incense, and sincerely repented for all the wrongs she had committed. Deep in her heart, N earnestly prayed that Avalokieshvara Bodhisattva would bless her with a job. She vowed that if she earned a salary, she would divide it into 4 parts, 1 part to repay her parents' kindness, 1 part for living expenses, 1 part for charitable acts such as animal liberation and offerings, and 1 part for savings. Furthermore, she vowed from that day forward to become a lifelong vegetarian and diligently recite the Buddha's name every day. With such sincere determination, things truly began to change only a day or 2 later, filling N with joy. An old colleague unexpectedly introduced N to her husband and asked him to help submit N's application to a resort in Crossing. In fact, N had previously applied to that same resort 3 or 4 times, waiting hopelessly each time without ever being invited for an interview. Yet this time, surprisingly, immediately after submitting her application, the Human Resources Department called her for an interview along with 8 other candidates. Everyone knows that working at a luxury resort for foreign guests usually requires fluent English, tourism management qualifications, and several years of experience in similar positions. Looking around, all the candidates appeared highly experienced, including one of N's former classmates. That classmate spoke excellent English, possessed the appropriate qualifications, and already had 2 years of experience in the role. Comparing herself to the others, N realized she met almost none of the requirements. She had arrived full of excitement, but now she felt deeply discouraged. But since I'm already here, I'll just do my best. Putting aside her gloomy thoughts, N gathered her courage, lifted her face toward the sky, took a deep breath, and walked confidently into the interview room. She was surprised to discover that only she was interviewed 3 separate times by 3 different interviewers, while the other 8 candidates spent less than 2 minutes inside before leaving. All of them, including her friend, shook their heads pessimistically, as if things did not look promising. As for N, because her English was poor, she answered awkwardly and hesitantly. After going through 3 interview rounds, she returned home carrying an evaluation sheet stating that her professional skills were still weak. She felt disheartened and had little hope left. 2 days later, on May 15, 2018, N stood speechless in shock. She even pinched herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming when she received news that she had been accepted. The resort had hired only 1 person, and that person was her. She froze for a moment before bursting into tears of joy and gratitude toward Avalokieshvara Bodhisattva for the blessing. Not only that, among all the resorts in the area, only that particular resort had a separate meal plan for lifelong vegetarians. Once again, N was deeply moved by what she felt was the compassionate arrangement of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, allowing her to fulfill her vow of vegetarianism. Indeed, only when we sincerely change ourselves can good things begin to happen. We cannot blame the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for not responding to our prayers. Such thoughts are deeply mistaken. The fault lies within ourselves, yet we keep complaining that heaven has no eyes. From that moment onward, N faithfully carried out all the vows she had made before the Buddha altar, and gradually every aspect of her life began improving greatly.